others online. And we are recording this today, so it will be useful as a reference for us in the future. And also, maybe there will be some who would want to learn what the presentation was who couldn't come tonight. I'm Tony Miller, and I am a part of a committee that is being charged, has been charged with helping us to prepare for the possibility of a capital campaign. We're looking forward to having that as an agenda item at our May congregational meeting. And other people on that committee are Jim White, Bill Zagel, Don Smith Lopez, Tim Cruz, Tim Martin, Jeremy Archer, and then of course as our ministerial liaison. So thank you for being here tonight. This should be helpful for us in learning more about capital campaigns in general, and specifically about what role a consultant might play for us should we choose to move in that direction. And we have a guest who's going to help us with that. I want to mention that you can put something in chat at any time. There probably will be a time later for open questions, and then you can either ask those by raising your hand, or depending on what kind of crush of comments we have going on, perhaps just unmuting yourself and asking your question or making your comment. But again, thanks for coming. Bromley, will you introduce Jill for us, please?
Yes, we are delighted this evening to have Jill White with us. She is a regional mission interpreter with the UCC Church Building and Loan Fund. The UCC Church Building and Loan Fund is an organization, part of our denomination, that helps congregations to do all sorts of work in order to become more vital as a congregation. They they seek to create, this is their vision, a just world for all as we dramatically increase economic, social, environmental, and spiritual vitality, especially in neighborhoods across the United States where poverty obstructs abundant life for all people. Jill comes to the Church Building and Loan Fund with over 20 years of experience in stewardship and fundraising. She has a certificate in an executive certificate from the Lake Institute on Faith and Giving, which is well known and well respected in the religious fundraising program, and currently is helping congregations, 8 separate congregations who are in the midst of capital campaigns from New Hampshire to Hawaii, which are trying to raise in the range of $150,000 to $1.3 million. So a wide range of congregational sizes and projects too. So we are grateful for her expertise and her taking the time to be with us today. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Jill. Thank you. Yes, please.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. I do have a brief presentation I'd like to share, and then as Tony said, we'll have a time for questions afterwards. So I will share my screen and we can get going. Let me know when you can see that slide.
Looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as Bromley said, I'm with the United Church of Christ Church Building and Loan Fund. Our main offices are in Cleveland. However, I am based in Maryland. The vision of Church Building and Loan Fund is to transform communities by helping the church live into God's economy. So we assist new and renewing congregations of the United Church of Christ and other denominations across the United States with programs and services that help a congregation plan, raise, finance, and build projects, including property and social enterprises that advance the mission of the church. What does that mean? For me, it means that I work with churches across the country guiding capital campaigns, leading stewardship programs, helping with visioning, strategic planning and implementation, repurposing churches, helping churches be the church coming back from the pandemic. So a wide variety of services that we classify as capacity building, help you live more fully into your mission in your context. We are the oldest institution of our kind in the United States across all denominations. We were founded in 1853. We will be celebrating our 170th year anniversary this year. And with that, it brings me to our topic for tonight, raising new revenue to fund ministry vision, because that's what the capital campaign is about. It can be about everything from renovating buildings to adding new buildings to expanding mission, but it is all mission and ministry based. So I know you've been going through a visioning process, and the visioning process is really the start of identifying the projects, the programs, what you want to take in to that capital campaign, because that's one of the ways you can make the plans and dreams that come out of a visioning process a reality. The capital campaign is about building your congregation's capacity. It can be the greatest faith-raising experience in the life of your church and community, because you're going to be setting a challenging financial goal, probably raising more money than you have in the recent history of your church. And it's going to require members, everyone, to give their best giving. And for some, it will be the greatest faith commitment of their lives. A capital campaign can also be an experience that energizes the spirit and results in a deeper understanding of generosity. We like to work with churches and help them first assess the criteria for a successful capital campaign. And those criteria are congregation community is fully informed of the projects being considered and is strongly united in its support of those projects. I once did a financial feasibility study for a church in Illinois. They had 10 projects on their capital campaign list. When I did that study, I discovered that exactly half of the people I spoke with supported the first 5 and exactly half supported the second 5. And both groups said if the other group of projects were on the list, they were not going to commit to the campaign. So it's very important that the congregation is united around the projects to be considered for that campaign. There also shouldn't be any significant issues that require resolution in the church, such as a conflict or maybe significant debt that will prevent people from giving their best to a campaign. There are supportive and satisfied relationships among members. The projects are ministry or mission focused. The right leadership is recruited, and I have that underlined because the capital campaign is one instance in the church where we recruit the leadership, because you want to make sure you have the people with the right skill set. And then, of course, the church needs to be financially ready for that campaign. And one of the ways we assess that financial readiness is through a financial feasibility study. I actually have a meeting tonight right after this one to talk with the church in Oregon about the completion of their financial feasibility study. I completed we'll give them the oral findings tonight. I like to call the financial feasibility study a reality check, because it's going to not only determine as objectively as possible the probability of success of achieving your campaign goal, but it also helps test those congregational relationships and people's involvement in the church and what the financial capacity is. The financial feasibility study conducts a series of church interviews. Working with church leadership, we identify people to be interviewed throughout the process. And people that are interviewed should represent the entire demographics of the church. So it will be current church leaders. It will be all ages. It will be respected members of the congregation. People who might make those leadership gifts, long-term members and newer members. We even want to talk with younger members, children and youth. And we even talk with members who are in opposition to the campaign. So that's how it really becomes that temperature check. We talk with a wide representation of the church membership. The study itself will focus on opinions, feelings, thoughts, and information gathered from those interviewed. It can also help identify leaders and volunteers for the capital campaign. We conduct a minimum of 20 interviews. It's always more than 20 because we interview couples together. I've even interviewed 6 members of a family all in the same time slot, the parents and their adult children and the adult children's spouses. So it is a great way to gather information for the church. The diagram you see on the right-hand side of the slide is a table of contents from a financial feasibility study report that I had written. And you can see the wide range of topics that are covered: state of the church, state of the membership, feedback on the projects, campaign financials, and people resources. The study results in a probability of success score. And it's this score that helps me determine whether the church is ready for a capital campaign. And you can see that a typical probability of success is between 60 and 70%. Just so happens that the church I'm talking with later tonight their score is 75%. So they have a high probability of success for their campaign. But I also base it's on the responses to those questions and if there's any more work that needs to be done before going into the campaign. So the results from the study provide a solid indication of readiness, or they highlight the need for more homework. And that homework can be educating the congregation about the projects, doing some more research on what the projects themselves are going to cost, really looking if there might be community support for the capital campaign. But either way, the financial feasibility study will tell you the readiness of the congregation for that campaign. Yeah. When I work with a church and do a study, we do the interviews, I wrap up with an oral report, and then within 10 days of presenting that oral report, I provide a written report to the church that has all the findings, all the comments that everyone said, anonymously recorded, so no one's name is associated with those comments, but all of the feedback from the study itself, because it is very useful for the congregation. Because when I tell people the results are anonymous, their comments are anonymous, I'm often told a lot of things that aren't stated in church. The people are more free to share them. So it is a great way for a church to gather information. And I have churches who will contract just to do that financial feasibility study before they even consider a capital campaign. And that happens to be the case with the church I'm talking with later tonight. So once we do a financial feasibility study, and not all churches will do a study, it really depends upon their goal and how comfortable they are with the support of the campaign by their members. We always recommend that if you have a goal that's more than $500,000, that you do that financial feasibility study, because it does help you get a feel for where funds within the congregation might come from to support that goal. So once the church is ready, that readiness has been determined, the capital campaign can begin. And the purpose of a capital campaign goes beyond raising money for a building. Of course, it's used to raise funds for new construction and remodeling. It might be for developing a social media online presence, for debt reduction. A lot of churches I've been working with lately are using it to develop funds for continued maintenance of the building, because so many churches defer maintenance. It can be used for new staff, seed money for a new staff position. It can be used for new ministries and missions. It can be used for a wide variety of things. And I like to point this out because so often churches will say capital campaign, it can only be used for capital. And that's not the case, which is why it's so important to do that visioning process up front, because it helps identify projects that go beyond capital. United Church of Christ Capital Campaign Services are faith-based. We work with the assumption and affirmation of God's abundant resources and grace. They're spirit-filled. We rely on God's spirit to touch the lives of members in transformative ways. And they are lay-led. We train lay people and walk side by side with you to conduct all aspects of the campaign process. We do not believe it's the pastor's role to raise funds. If a member is needing to speak to the pastor to contribute that lead gift, by all means, the pastor can be involved. But we really feel that the pastor is the spiritual guide. They are the teacher and the preacher, helping the congregation understand generosity, while the lay people lead the campaign. So what do we do as Capital Campaign Services? How do I work with the church? So when I contract with the church for that capital campaign, I help them establish a timeline, and I build the timeline for the church. You tell me when you want to end, and we build the timeline accordingly. Our capital campaigns are typically 13 to 15 weeks, the active part of the campaign. The giving period, of course, takes place after that. We provide guidance in the selection and recruitment of those team members. And of course, we don't know your members, but we provide very detailed job descriptions that help you recruit the right people with the right skill set, and then provide training for members of that recruited campaign executive team. The executive team is made up of 7 to 9 different functional areas. So often people say no to serving on a campaign leadership team because they think it's all about asking for money, and it's not. There are many roles. There's giving potential, and this is where all of the members are evaluated, looked at, assessed for the potential to give a gift. And the membership is members and friends of the congregation are broken into 2 categories: those who can give lead gifts and those who might not be able to give of a lead gift size. We have people who work with those potential lead gift donors, and that is the group that asks for money. It's the only group on the campaign that asks for money. Everyone else is providing the campaign materials and helping people assess their ability to give to the campaign. That's what the are. We also have groups that are responsible for the materials that are needed to promote and advertise and market the campaign, and help tell the story of why the projects that are chosen for the campaign need to be funded. So there's print and digital materials. They are preparing all of the materials that are needed. They're also working with electronic and social media. And then there's publicity. Many churches that they'll say to me, we don't have all the people for these leadership roles. So oftentimes these 2 groups are combined into one communications task group. There's also administrative support, and this is not the current church secretary. We always say that this needs to be a separate group because the church administrative assistant is already busy making sure that the church continues to run, doing the daily work. This group, of course, works with the current administrative support, but this is the group that gets the mailing lists together and makes sure the materials are disseminated as needed in accordance with the timeline. There are group meetings that are offered to help educate people on the campaign and answer any questions. And of course, there's hospitality that needs to be provided. And because we all know that when you have a meeting at church of any kind, you need hospitality. So oftentimes those 2 groups are combined. And then lastly, there's recording and follow-up. These people that are going to be recording the letters of intent or the pledges as they come in, and then following up during the giving period, so after the active phase of the campaign, to ensure that the commitments are filled. So again, the campaign executive team, that leadership team, is comprised of anywhere from 7 to 10 people, in addition to the campaign administrator who pulls everything together. Services also provide a wealth of resources and materials. So I provide a campaign manual that the church can use as a guide, and I supplement that with a Google Drive full of about 100 documents that are examples from other churches, example letters, example brochures, case statements, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Because the first part of the campaign moves fast and furiously, and I'll get into that in a minute to help you understand that more. But we resource you in a variety of ways, in addition to providing that campaign calendar and training. And again, the consultant that you choose, should it be me, for UCC Capital Campaign Services, we are there every step of the way. I meet weekly with the campaign administrator. I have phone calls, Zooms, whatever is needed to make sure the campaign is as successful as possible. So what does a campaign look like? It may or may not start with that financial ability, but the financial feasibility study is always completed prior to the capital campaign beginning. And there are 3 phases to a capital campaign. I like to call the first phase the preparation phase or the homework phase, because that's when you're doing all the background work to get ready to ask people to support the campaign. So it's during the preparation phase that logo and theme, all the materials are developed, the campaign brochure, the case statement, letter of intent, a ways to give document, frequently asked questions. The mailing lists are updated and made sure that they are complete with not just members, but friends of the congregation and anyone in the community that you want to ask to support the campaign. And it's also during this time that the campaign leaders are trained. This is often the first 4 weeks of the campaign. Sometimes churches will want to start a little bit earlier because they know developing the materials takes some more time. So it is possible to extend this phase and start the campaign an extra 2 weeks early so that the preparation phase is 6 weeks to give you more time to develop the materials. I've been working with a lot of churches lately who will start that preparation phase and then actually take a hiatus. They'll start in the spring, take a break over the summer, and pick up the campaign again in the fall. The second part of the campaign process is the quiet phase. And these are the middle 3 to 4 weeks where the lead donors are asked to make their gift to the campaign. Also, church leadership are asked to give, as well as those who are on the task groups, the task group leaders, which is the campaign executive team, and the volunteers that are working with them. So leadership and those involved in the campaign and the lead donors give their gifts, complete their letters of intent or pledges during the quiet phase. The campaign is promoted, and this is when those informational meetings are held to help people really understand the campaign, the projects, how the money will be used. And then the last phase of the campaign is the public phase. And this is where all of the members who have not received their letters of intent to date will receive their campaign information, where they are asked to contribute. The campaign has continued to be promoted. It's where gifts to date have been reported. So all the gifts that or the commitments that come in during the quiet phase are tallied and reported out in the public phase to try to energize all of the members that are there to continue to give to the campaign. And then the active part of the campaign concludes with Celebration Sunday. And this is when you celebrate that successful capital campaign. It's a fast and furious and action-packed 13 to 15 weeks. And then the giving period begins after that. And that's the capital campaign. I know there's always the question about fees, and our fees are what we call gifted fees, because all fees paid to Church Building and Loan Fund are returned to mission. So our fees are based upon a tithe, 10% of what members contribute to the budget. So if members contribute $500,000, the fee is $50,000. That I will tell you now, that's not written in stone. We do discount that when churches have large churches have members that contribute a lot. So I don't have an example up here because I always like to talk with the church about what their members give before quoting a fee. Typically it's 10%, but not in all cases. We do discount that. 60% of the fee goes to Church Building and Loan Fund, and it continues our work with churches. We provide loans to churches. We have leadership development programs called ADESE for entrepreneurial fellowships, and you can see there's a portion of the mission fee that goes to that. We have a Partners in Vision program where we provide 2 days full of workshops teaching churches about everything from repurposing their buildings for revenue generation to stewardship. 40% of that fee goes directly to mission. And as I've already said, 10% goes to our entrepreneurial fellowship, but 30% goes back to ministries of your choosing. So 30% of the fee you pay, you will tell us who you want to send that to. And we will then send it to you once the campaign is fully paid up. One of the ministries we request to be UCC or denominational affiliated, and then the other can be any ministry of your choosing. But each of those ministries receive 15% of the total fee, and we send it to them on your behalf. Churches sometimes choose to send it to their conference. They send it directly to National for OCWM. They send it to Back Bay Mission in Biloxi if it's a church that is working with them. But it can be any UCC affiliated ministry, and then again, any ministry that you are currently supporting. And with that, that's my presentation. I like to leave time for lots of questions because people get tired of looking at presentations. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will provide you a PDF version of this presentation, so you will have it on with your recording that you can refer to and send out to whoever might need it. Before I stop sharing, are there any slides that anyone wants me to go back to specifically, like right now? Okay. I will stop sharing and open it up to questions. I put you all to sleep.
Can you hear me? I always have a question.
Yeah, we need to use the mic, so it's coming.
Hi, Jill. Thanks. I'm Tim. I learned quite a bit from that.
Good.
Have you been doing this long enough and consulted enough capital campaigns to have validated your prediction of success model versus what actually happened in past campaigns? Is that a good predictor?
We have been, the Church Building and Loan Fund has been using this model for at least 30 years. I myself have been doing capital campaigns for 28 years. I calculated after I talked with probably this afternoon. I have 8 ongoing right now, and yes, the probability of success score is well validated. I will tell you, though, that even when a church has a good probability of success score, if I have comments or findings in the rest of the study, I will recommend they not move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just based on that probability of success score. And a prime example of that would be if a church has a good probability of success score, but a lot of people tell me throughout the process of the interview, we just don't think the members are well enough informed. I'll make a recommendation to go back and do more education rather than telling them to move forward. So yes, we've done enough. We've helped churches raise over $60 million through all the capital campaigns that we've done over the years. And I have 8 going right now, but I just lost my train of thought. A lot of them, even though they have that score, I will recommend they still go back and do more work because, again, I might have some red flags.
Thanks. That's great.
Sure.
Thinking about timing of these campaigns, what do you have recommendations one way or the other around how they relate to your regular stewardship or enlistment campaign?
Yes, you never do them together.
Okay.
If you do them together, both will suffer because one will say, okay, I have $5,000. I'm going to give half to each. So you always either, a lot of churches will do their stewardship campaign and then do the capital campaign afterwards, or vice versa, spread them up throughout the year, but you never do them together. That's really the key statement. And I always suggest that they be separated by at least a month in the calendar. I've had quite a few churches that will do a financial feasibility study in the fall and then begin the capital campaign early the next year because it's well enough separated from their fall stewardship campaign if they do it in the fall.
Thank you.
Sure. And some churches will start a capital campaign at the start of the year. I always encourage them not to be active in the campaign during Easter. So we take a 2-week break over Easter and then we pick back up before people are heading out for the summer. They will start in the spring, take a break over the summer. It really depends upon the church's calendar, but we did a wide variety of ways with success.
Wonderful.
Other questions?
What's the, can you do the financial feasibility? What's the cost of a financial feasibility study as opposed to if it's successful and we go ahead,
Yeah, it's typically 1.8% of member giving. But again, we look at that on a church by church basis because our goal isn't to make money off of this. It's to help you be successful and then support mission. So we
Sure.
try to have the fees not be exorbitant, but I've had churches do a financial feasibility study and come back to me a year and a half later, we're ready. So one does not need to follow the other immediately.
Thank you.
Bill here. Your 2.5 to 3 months of the campaign itself, is that including the preparation 4 weeks that you were talking about, or are you just saying that's from when we start the quiet period of raising money?
That includes the preparation period. So the 13 to 15 weeks is from preparation through Celebration Sunday.
I would guess that our situation, our church is not terribly different from a lot in that we seem to have a challenge of living within our budget. And of course, that makes things, we have our stewardship campaign in the fall. That makes things difficult. And so I guess my question is, for churches like us, how do you deal with that? That is, a church that perennially has problem making its budget and then being asked on top of that to participate in the capital.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And so many of the churches I work with are dealing with that. And one of the things with a capital campaign, the giving comes from another bucket, if you will. So people aren't giving to the campaign from the funds with which they support the church operating budget. So we teach them other ways to give. We have a ways to give document. So we help people be creative in coming up with their gift to the church. It might be an IRA rollover. It might be selling stock. It might be from savings. In my neck of the woods, what you see behind me is out my dining room window. I'm very much in farm country. And it's not uncommon when churches out here do capital campaigns that a farmer will sell a load of corn and donate that money to the capital campaign. So in that instance, it's helping people be creative and realize and help them determine other sources of funding they might have to support that capital campaign. And that's one of the reasons why we say it's going to be the biggest step of faith some people take, because they're going to be giving funds that they may not realize they really do have available. The other answer to this is the giving is over a 3 to 5 year period, depending upon your goal. So when people realize that, they say they'd like to give $1,000, they have 3 years to pay that and they can plan for it. So it helps to budget that into people's giving and they're able to meet that gift. So creativity and really helping people understand the nature of the gift, and that when they fill that letter of intent, they're not writing the check for the whole amount at the same time. They're giving it over an extended period of time.
Thank you.
I hear in that question too, a little bit about, and wonder if you could talk about how some campaigns include like capacity building. Some of the things that we've talked about exploration team as potential projects, and that the Buildings and Grounds Committee in their work has been doing is how things could benefit, the life of the congregation, but also could help us increase our rental income, or just increase the amount and our capacity to do ministry in the congregation, which
Mhm.
may well increase our ability to build revenue for.
Right. And that's really where a good visioning process before the capital campaign comes in, because it helps you determine what it is in your mission and ministry that you are passionate about, and how you might be able then to repurpose your facility for other uses that might be revenue generating. And then when you determine those projects, the capital campaign then helps you renovate the facilities, helps you repurpose them so that they do become more attractive as rental space, if that makes sense. And, I can give you an example here. A church I did a visioning process for, and then a capital campaign in Delaware, determined through the visioning process that they really wanted to make their church, which was huge, and they weren't using all of it because they were a congregation of 20 people. They really wanted to make it more of a community center. So the capital campaign helped renovate the basement into showers and facilities that the homeless in the community could come in and use. And they're then renovating that middle floor into more of a community center, and converting the third floor of the building into office space so that they can rent it out for sustainability. So the visioning really helps you get to that point. Is that what you were looking for?
Is it? Am I muted? Okay, Jill, one of the concerns that we've had in sort of planning this, you've touched on in your presentation, that we have a good bit of deferred maintenance kind of work that needs to be taken care of. We've actually had some question as to whether people can get excited about that. Obviously, it's important to our ministry and our mission, but in terms of communicating that in a way that allows people to feel enthusiasm. Have you had?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common that there's the building projects there, and I always recommend there's an element of mission to the capital campaign, a portion of the funds given to mission, whatever. And a lot of churches doing that, starting an endowment or a building maintenance fund. And people are getting excited about it, because that means if the money is there and is built upon, you can have money throughout the year to do other things. So the way to get people excited is you're not going to have a capital campaign for a long time if you build this fund and invest it wisely so that it grows. And then also all the money that's contributed to this capital campaign for deferred maintenance now becomes available throughout the year to use for other types of programming. So it's helping you further your mission by not having you spend money on repairs that arise because that you didn't have the money for. Does that make sense?
One of the things you will see soon, church members, in your inbox, a survey with a number of potential projects. And some of them are around that, how do we sort of build capacity in our endowment or in our capital reserve fund, so that, or even in retiring a mortgage debt, so that we would then have that those monies available to do ministry during the year.
Yep.
There are many others too, if that's not your cup of tea, but anyway.
So a question would be, what, not to focus too much on negatives, but what if there have been campaigns you're familiar with that didn't fly as well as they weren't as successful as they could have been? Is it easy to sort of see those factors coming out ahead of time?
Yes. Yep. What happens is the committee doesn't do a good job with the education, and there are questions by members going into the campaign. They might have a project that there are a certain number of people in the church that just do not support, so they do not give their best gift to the campaign. And that often comes out in that financial feasibility study. And an example I would give you is a church in Illinois. I did the financial feasibility study. I learned that a lot of the older members, older in longer term, not age, but who had attended the church for a while, were not keen on renovating this sacred building, this part of the building that was where they had the children's area. They wanted to expand, people wanted to expand it, but the members didn't want it to be changed in any way. They went ahead with the campaign having that in there. And because it was still in there and people were not allowed to designate funds, they chose not to give to the campaign. So that campaign actually came up $150,000 short because they hadn't addressed the fact that some people weren't happy with the program. Other churches, let's see. I'd have to say that really sums it up. Not doing your homework before you start the campaign, not doing the education and getting member buy-in on the projects, making sure they understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it's helping the church, and how the monies are going to be used are the biggest reason that I've seen for churches not achieving their goal. You're welcome.
Jill, based on something you just mentioned, you said something about people not being able to designate their funds when they pledge to the capital campaign, which is how I've always assumed it works. If we, in our homework, identify 5 projects that are $1 million, but that's just a big bucket and that's our goal, and people give into the bucket. Are there campaigns where you do allow people to designate their pledges, or is that a bad idea?
Not typically, because then you end up with more money for a project. One project could suffer because you have fewer people donating to it, and all of a sudden the project for which you needed 250,000, you've got 600,000, and you're stuck with that money's been designated for that project, and you can't use it in any other way unless you can get the member to go back and change their mind. How you can deal with that is by having what we call naming opportunities. So if you're renovating a room, let's say, and you're making your fellowship hall more community friendly to try to get more people to come in and rent it. If someone will give a significant enough gift for that, 100,000 or more, they can name the room after them. But it has to be with significant enough gifts. That's the caveat. You don't want everyone that's giving $1,000 to have something named after them. But typically you do not do the designated because it can backfire on you, and I have seen that. But you do naming opportunities or memorial gifts, but they have to be a significant gift, significant in size.
Thanks, that makes sense.
I believe I heard something in one of your previous answers that there is the possibilities, at least on some occasions, to combine what we might think of as a classic capital campaign with funding an endowment or some reserves.
Yep.
And to me, that sounds interesting because that would cut down the number of money raising campaigns you might need if you've got an endowment also you're trying to build.
Yes. Yeah, that's very common as well. I just finished up a campaign with a church in Arizona where they did exactly that. They started an endowment. The funds were not restricted, but they decided to invest it and use a percentage as with a typical endowment. And through that capital campaign, they did their parking lot. They gave some to mission, and they established the endowment. So it does it can serve many functions. And when the story is told properly, people will get excited about giving to each of those. I think I just saw a question pop up in the chat.
Great.
Can you see it?
Yes, what about if there is a division among members who want the church to remain the same size versus others that envision the church growing? And if this could mean people would choose to leave the church if it grows. Church growth is not always an outcome of a capital campaign. The capital campaign is not necessarily raising funds for growth. And church growth would be an issue, for or against, that really wouldn't be addressed through this campaign unless you specifically were hiring staff whose purpose it was to grow the congregation. But that's more of an issue for the ministry team, for council leadership, elders, whatever you call them. That's a membership issue, not necessarily an issue coming out of a capital campaign. Does that answer the question?
The
The
there's
last I'm sorry, and the last capital campaign we built the wing and renovated the kitchen, and we also built a Habitat for Humanity house. So there was something that improved the building, but also spoke to mission. That was a wonderful capital campaign. You've got mission, you're improving the building, looking towards the future. I'm sorry, Bromley, if you were going to read that, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I was gonna just comment too. One of the things that we sort of heard, so part of the reason we're exploring this is because it was one of the recommendations that came out of our financial sustainability and stewardship committee. Yeah, we were FSSC, and we noted that we needed to take some actions in order to remain financially sustainable. And so this is again, but we do have, this congregation is just about 60 years old. And it is a lot bigger than when it started, unsurprisingly, and the budget is bigger too. And so there is that sense, but I wonder, can you, I don't know. I wonder if it's just part of the story that you tell, that we're not necessarily doing this to change things. We're doing this to help us do the things that make us who we are, in a sustainable way.
Yeah, the capital campaign should address your mission. It's not necessarily to do things so you grow, but it should help you better fulfill your mission in your context, right, and meet the needs of your community. Because everything you do should be about your community and your why, how you want to transform the community. What is the impact you want to have on your community? And it may so happen that as an outcome of that, the church might grow. Members still leave because of what you've done through the campaign. But one of the things I say in my visioning process presentation, that if a church is to thrive and survive in today's world, it needs to be willing to take some risks.
Say more about that. What do you mean by risks?
Willing to do something different, willing to think outside the box, willing to reach out to people in the community who you may not have thought of doing ministry with or for in the past. This little church in Delaware that I mentioned earlier is a white German Reformed church in the midst of a community that is quickly becoming Hispanic and African American, and they wanted to keep to themselves. Through their visioning process, they opened up a school for the children in the community, and they've accepted 12 new members because they're meeting the needs of the community. They have an after-school program now for these kids who were going home and being by themselves. So that was a risk for them because it's a very much an older congregation. So it's just doing church in new and different ways, a hybrid church. I talk with a lot of churches. Oh, now that COVID's over, we're never going to do online church again. Well, they're not going to survive that way.
I really like that, what you just said, doing church in new and different ways. I hope some people here can write that down. That sounds like a great buzz line.
We have a program that's called Transform Church, Transform Community, and it's a series of 10 modules that we teach on being church differently. So it's talking about visioning and repurposing facilities and doing hybrid church and raising money for mission and marketing. And being church differently is how we are going to survive moving into the future. Jerry, you got me on my soapbox. I apologize for that. I love talking about what we do.
If I had to take away one critical factor from all that you've said, what I'm hearing is a very important key to success is how we tell the story.
Absolutely. Because we know when people give to a church, they give to a church that meets needs, not to a church that has needs. So people aren't going to give to help you repair your roof, but they're going to give to help you repair the roof so that you continue to have the missions and invite people into the church that you serve. Or they're going to give to help you renovate a corner of your church into an apartment for an immigrant because you're helping to meet needs. That's not a need that you have. And we know that's true in stewardship programs as well as capital campaigns. But you're absolutely right. Telling the story and making sure everyone understands that story and the benefits of the campaign before going into it.
Can I ask an unrelated question?
Sure.
You mentioned earlier on sort of identifying other community partners who might participate in the campaign. Who might those folks be? Are those
are typically people who might already be using your church. Or if coming out of a visioning process, you identify that you want to establish a feeding program for a certain demographic. You might find another organization that is looking for a space for that. So they might be willing to help support your capital campaign, give you funds to help make that space a reality because it's helping them fulfill their mission as well. When we lead a capital campaign, we have what we call the A and the B list. And the A list are the members that come all the time, that know what the church is doing and are regular attenders. The B list are people who might come infrequently, who are people in the community, but they're also people who used to attend and have moved away, but still feel friendly towards the church. They might be the former pastors or children of former pastors. So those are the types of quote unquote community people that can often help support a capital campaign. And an example I like to give is my own church. We had a capital campaign, we were renovating, and we contacted the children of a former pastor, and they wanted to honor their father. So they gave us $100,000. And this is one of those naming opportunities, $100,000 to name the foyer after him. And it's an art area. We display art, but it's named after this former pastor. Didn't expect that gift in the least, but it's because we're reaching out not only to members, but to people outside the church.
Well, we really blew that. We already named the hall after the former pastors. They're here in this meeting. No, I'm just
Just their blood, sweat, and tears.
no, I'm just teasing. Are there other questions?
I want to say thank you, Jill, for the presentation and the dialogue this evening. I think it's been great. Those of us who've been working on preparation for this have both been reaffirmed in some of the things that we have been working on and also have gotten some new thoughts and insights about how to proceed. So
Great,
and
good.
I'm sure that the rest who have attended have also benefited. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Any other comments that anyone wants to make before we end this? We don't want to cut anybody off, but
I just want to
nothing
say that I will, like I said earlier, I will email Tony and Cup and Bromley the presentation. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I never mind answering questions, whether you've contracted with us or not. I'm always happy to help.
Great. Okay, well, we thank you and yes, appreciate the time.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Happy to do it. Happy to do it. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person, but happy to be there virtually.
Or we could be there looking at that farm country with you.